Welcome to another edition of Draft Physics, arguing forever and ever and ever. Points that probably don't matter. Anyway, we're stuck doing, I guess. Alright, so I keep wanting to focus this on the fact that what I have, well, I'll draw some of that. Just about what actually causes the pattern in the traditional Michelson, whatever, interferometer. And nobody seems to want to have that conversation. It's always about some other ether test or some other kind of crap, which is sort of annoying. But let's go over. This is a very good comment in the sense that it was puzzling. Again, there's catches everywhere. And everybody says this is all so simple. And everybody's gone over it, and there's no complications, and we all know what's happening. And no. Anyway, it really deserves, these fundamental experiments and these fundamental notions of how things function are the things where the conversation really should be, because it still isn't solid. It's really mushy, and it's really built on, again, weak evidence. And the fact that these people won't concede that they've drawn whole elaborate constructs of theory, and they don't have anything like the solid evidence that like Darwin had. And Darwin didn't even have all of the genetic information, and he only had a tiny fraction of a geological record. And he made a good argument, because there was still, even with a tiny bit of the evidence, he still had enough evidence. Here we are sitting there 100 years into a lot of assumptions, and their evidence hasn't grown. I mean, tiny fractions of additions to their tiny fraction of a thin layer of reason to believe. And they don't even see that as an indication that maybe they're on the wrong track. I mean, they won't concede this simple argument that by comparison to other things we know to be true, we don't know Heisenberg, and we don't know many worlds, and we don't know even black holes, and it's bent space and bent time. These aren't known things. And then they're adding things like dark matter and dark energy that are even thinner amounts of evidence. And they just, how can you have a conversation with people that won't concede their theory does sound, it is like a religion. They have a tiny bit of evidence. The evidence is, we all believe it. That's supposed to be persuasive. Well, we all bought it, so why don't you? That's like their number one argument. There is no, the 2 or 3 or who knows where those arguments are. Like, oh, it's the most reliable this in the world. It's the most predictive blah. Yeah, you just say so. You don't prove so. Alright, anyway. So, alright, so we're dealing with the distance thing in a moving experiment. Now, I guess the first thing that should have been conceded, like with a rule, like a Newton kind of rule, I guess there should be like a Newton kind of rule where somebody made the observation, that anytime you have a moving target, you'll never have the same distances. They'll either be increasing or decreasing. That's the only choice. You can't move a point in space from you and maintain the same distance, theoretically. Well, not even theoretically. Yes, you can, but yeah, it has to be on one arc and one arc only. So anywhere else in space will be either more distance or less distance. And that's a problem with this analysis, is you have to remember that. Alright, well, anyway, so let's get to the comment. Alright, let's say the distance between the mirrors and the floor tile is floor tiles. So he's just breaking it down to, let's make it simple. So just like a relativity experiment, you do something simple and you just say it's half the speed of light, and therefore your math gets really easy. Alright, are you saying the photon will travel exactly 8 tiles round trip, right? Well, so I certainly implied that yes, that would be the implication was that it will end up being, I don't have the other paper, it will end up equaling, okay, in total, what the non-moving experiment equals in sense of I should have said proportionally the same, but whatever. I mean, it's in this realm that we have to remember that if we're going to compare it to something, we have to have that something. It's the experiment's not having in the direction of the movement, but it's still in the movement, so it's moving in another way. So yes, but you're correct. The way I described it was too simplistic for when you start going really fast. There's implications. Well, anyway, let's analyze ignoring relative relative length contraction. Yes, please. Time dilation and Sasquatches along the way. Yes, let's do that. Assume the mirror is traveling at half light speed. Good. So by the time the photon covers 4 tiles, the mirror has moved away 2 tiles. So I'll draw this, but yes. By the time the photon covers those 2 extra tiles, so that's 6 tiles total, the mirror has moved away 1 more tile. Yes. So it has to move another tile. It has to essentially, yes, it has to keep compensating with another tile, and it's only getting half back. So for every 1 tile the light throws in, the other thing moving is throwing in a half tile. So it's hard to get ahead quickly. The photon now travels the extra tile, 7 tiles still outbound. The mirror has moved off half a tile. From calculus and infinite series, you don't even need that, you just need to draw it. We know that this chase will end in the 8th tile, and the photon will travel a total of 8 tiles total outbound. Yes, and so if you pick the right speed, it comes out to be exactly twice as much, you know, and that's kind of interesting. That takes exactly twice as long. So at half the speed of light, it takes twice as long. But you could sort of infer that this was going to be a problem, because you could just do the infinite thing and just say, well, what if I made the thing going away the speed of light? Well, yeah, it'll take forever then. Alright, and we haven't even begun our return trip. Yes, so we're already in big trouble because we're at twice the distance, and we're going to do the divide by 2 thing, and we're already at 8. So the other thing has to be instantaneous for us to fix this problem. But there's a catch. Anyway, but we know the photon traveled an extra 4 tiles along the way out. And we haven't even begun the return trip, but we know, yes. So we're already at 8. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So we're all used up if we're going to match the experiment where nothing's moving. On the return trip, by the time the photon is halfway, i.e. traveled 2 tiles, the other one has come forward 1 tile, and they will meet somewhere on the 3rd tile. So they will meet after the light travels 1 something. You know, 1 some fraction. Right. We don't need to do the math. Well, whether we do the math or not, we need to understand at least the proportions. But we can tell that the return trip will be 2 something tiles. I don't know if it's 2 something. Speed of light goes 1 tile. Not the speed of light in that same amount of time. Oh, okay. Yeah, right. Speed of light goes 2 tiles. The other thing goes 1 tile. Right. So it'll be 2 some fraction. Correct. So the total is 8 plus 2 and some fraction. And so we're going to have a half number that's 5 and some fraction. So I guess I'll draw that. Oh, well, I'll finish your comment though. Yeah, finish that first. Alright, so we have a total of, okay, so you say it's right here. So the photon travels 10 something tiles round trip. 4 tiles extra on the way out, and reduced by 1 something on the way back. The 2 distances are not the same. So again, obviously we've already conceded the 2 distances forward and back aren't the same. The question is it the same as the other leg? And what I would argue is the other leg is going to do exactly what coming towards does. So that's not going to work. But anyway, let's just illustrate the problem with an illustration. Yeah, that would be the way to go. Illustrate it with an illustration. So yeah, I mean, this is just, I mean, all this stuff, this is real physics, you know. I mean, it shouldn't be grotesquely simple. But the only reason why any of this is complicated is because we're having to prove or disprove God theories. It's not like we have to disprove something solid and rocky. We're having to disprove something that's a whole infrastructure of functions that aren't anything like what we can see in the real world. There's no evidence of bending and warping, and even waving is pretty non-existent. We see a lot of things that hit, and there's it's just even the argument about what's making this sound. I pointed out that these are little sonic booms. Little bits of this material have to be compressed and spring back, going faster than the speed of sound to actually make sound. There's little subtleties to this. I can't even convince people of that thing that seems so obvious. Alright, so we'll start at point 0, and then we'll just make some arbitrary spots here to illustrate. And this was the way to draw it. I mean, not that this guy drew it, but I mean, this was the way to do it if I would have thought about it in a more rational sense. So this is 1. Well, we probably, yeah, let's go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Alright. So the idea is alright, so this is the beam of light and it's going the speed of light. Point B is here, standing there. So when we start, we're going to go, let's just say we're going to go 4 seconds, or 4, I guess it would be 4 seconds at the speed of light. And we're just going to see how far we've progressed. So the light goes 4. And then in the time it takes the light to go those 4, the frame moving, okay, is going half the speed of light, so it moved too. Alright, so now we have to go at least, we have to, so now we're still behind. So we'll go 2 more in the black. And then that'll get us 1 more in the red. And the good thing is now we're 1 short. Okay, and we got 2 short for the black, so obviously the black can go 2, and in the time it would take it to go 2, the red will go exactly 1, and there. So that's our solution. So it actually takes, at half the speed, if you're moving the frame half the speed of light, it would actually take twice as long as it would if the frame wasn't moving, to go in the direction of the movement. Alright, so let's do the return trip. So, the interesting thing also, I'll just point this out, I noticed, was if you take a point that's the same, so if you use this distance as one of these notches, right? Maybe I'll try to draw this in some other media. So if you think of this, and this, so this distance is the same as 1 notch. And then you go 1 notch over from that, you can sort of understand where this is one of these radius issues. And these lines end up being nicely proportional. Yeah. So, sort of indicating that we're back to this geometry question of like moving a laser across the moon, from the Earth, and or one of those questions where 2 things leave, say, the Big Bang, and they're moving at different trajectories. They're making distance between each other that they didn't really travel. So in a sense, they have an extra speed that they don't really have. Anyway, all right. So so let's do the other leg. All right. So we start at 4, and we start at 0. Alright, so the light moves, because it doesn't matter, they can't crash into each other, so we can just draw them facing each other. So the light moves 2, and in this time it took the light to move 2, the other thing will move 1 unit. This is going half the speed of light, and we have 1 unit left, which will mean it'll be some proportion like 3/8 or something, or 5/16 or some some amount, and that will be the total. Correct? Correct. A little more than a half. Alright. So, so let's write down those numbers. So we have 8 here, and we have 2, and let's say just 3/4, but probably not the right thing to do, but we'll do it anyway. So we have 10 and 3/4, and I'm probably a little bit big with 3/4. Alright, so that obviously divided by 2, alright, is going to give us 5 and 3/8. Alright, and that's obviously bigger than 4. Okay, so we were looking for 4, and we got 5 and 3/8, so that's broken. But the catch is the other leg you can't think of it as not being in the same moving frame, in the sense it has to obey that rule where motion is always going to create a problem. So to be fair, the other arm is also moving in this circumstance. So comparing it to the stationary circumstance wouldn't be fair, because there's obviously big implications to moving. So anyway, so we're back to having the conversation with the person next to me versus having one across the table. So now we have the across the table speed as 5 and 3/8 as the number, which is more than the 4 we were looking for. But the catch is, okay, that when I'm talking to the guy next to me, when you start going preposterously silly fast speeds, he's moving distance away from me also. So he's not going to be, my words are not going to, especially photons, but even regular sound waves, you can understand the sound wave isn't going to move with. It's going to be an arc. It's going to be one of these things. It's going to be, sound is going to come off this way. Oh, that's not a really great drawing there. And so you can sort of understand that this distance is the shortest distance, and as you start going out in this arc, this distance is a much longer distance. Alright. Or vice versa. It's obviously, yes, that's correct. Obviously, yes, this is correct. Alright, so let's do the sideways passenger now. And so what we're doing now is we gotta recognize the distance thing. So you're 4 units away, and you're gonna have units going up also, going forward. So half of this distance, again, this is the distance my words have to travel, and the point B, okay, so this is point A, and this is point B. This was point A, this was point B. Point B kept moving. In this case, point B is going to move this way. So for every 4 going this way at the speed of light, there's going to be 2 units going this way. So see, no cheats there. So B moves to there. And eventually, when it comes back to me again, B is going to be all the way here at number 4. So point B is going to end up moving 4 units away as it travels 8 units in this direction. So as it goes forward and back, what's really going to happen is point B is going to end up those 4 units away. And it's going to do it traveling, we'll just might as well make it one color, but it's going to travel this line to do it. I'm just fixing that wasn't really at the proper halfway point. And so this is the new distance. So instead of 2 of these forward and back, you have 2 of these, and this line, I think if you do the math, will come out to be 1 and 3/8 longer than 2 of these. So 2 of these, let's say. So you can sort of see, if I just made a triangle here, you can sort of see that this is the 4 line, and so obviously this line is going to be a bit bigger, and if you add it all up, it's going to be bigger by 1 3/8. So then you minus the 5 3/8 and from the 1 3/8, and you get back your 4. So the 2 will be the same because everything that happens just about here happens here. This ends up being exactly the same as this, except reversed. This would be subtracted distance, this would be added distance. So it still comes out to the 2 being the same amount of time. This one will take the same amount of time as this one will take, because this one loses the 1 3/8 here, and this one loses it there. Is there any other way to say that, to clarify that? So it's just the arc thing. So if this was the sound coming off, you can sort of get that this line, as the sound moves this way, it's stretching. So yeah, that's the part I wanted to get to. I knew there was a reason why I was doing that. Alright, so you got all this? I mean, there's nothing, you know, I didn't cheat the argument some here, right? I mean, we sort of understand that this is the control in the experiment, but the control is also moving. You can't have a control that's not being subjected to the same circumstances. The whole experiment's moving, so obviously this arm would be moving, and it just turns out that it erases the the extra problem, the amount over that the yeah, well, I don't know how to say it. Yeah, the amount too much is made up here. The half number is fixed back to 4 by how much this experiment is broken. It's broken much less. You know, the person sideways is screwed up a lot less than this one's screwed up, but it's screwed up by exactly the amount that will bring it back to the 2 being equal. All right. You know, I'm just thinking it through to make sure this is complicated, because this doesn't look like this equals this. This does not equal this. This equaled 2 3/4. This only creates 1 3/8 of screw up. So you're still at 8 here, which is twice as much as the control. Oh, but if you just minus this from this, that's going to be 1 3/8. So yeah, so you have to just understand that you have to apply the 1 3/8 to this total, and then divide by 2, and then you got your back to your 4. We have to subtract the 1 3/8. Yeah. Well, anyway, it works. I think it's okay. I followed it. All right. So what I'm contending in the interferometer. So this, you know, I don't want to keep doing it, but people insist. So the question is this: the simple form of the experiment is just forget about 2 paths and just figure out what's happening with 1 path. So the light comes in, and as I think everybody should agree, it doesn't matter whether you have your diffracting surface here or you have the diffracting surface here. What you need is something to create essentially a bunch of 1 and 2 slit experiments. Probably can't even see those little dots, right? Probably can't see that if I move up either. Well, you see them a little better. Alright, I just gotta draw much gianter. More bigness. So anyway, so you have a dirty surface that's going to diffract the light. And so the idea is that when the light goes through the splitter, not reflects, but goes through, so that's the only time it's diffracted. And what the light's also doing is slightly diverging. So this is we're back to this spreading argument. You know, what's the consequence when things are spreading? Is they have to travel more distance. Alright. So it goes through this diffraction gradient, and what's happening is it says when the light leaves, it has the pattern in it here. So the pattern's already in it, but the pattern's really small because the light hasn't diverged much. So now you're going to lengthen the path and have it travel a longer distance with that divergence built into it. So now the divergence is going to amplify, as the light spreads. Okay, I probably should have made those red coming back, and then you would have been able to see that better. So these are the coming back lengths. And as it spreads, these are not only becoming out of phase, in the sense that the light hits here much later than it hits here in terms of the phase of the light, because this is going to be a longer distance. I mean, it doesn't look like it, in these drawings, but that's what you're going to end up with. And then when this reflects, it travels again another distance, and this is where you get your pattern. And now, so the pattern, you also get it here, but it's weaker. And you can't see it. No, you get it here. Okay, sorry. But your light source is sort of in the way, so you don't get as complete a pattern. Alright. So you don't need this whole arm doesn't have to exist. So this doesn't exist. And this is what you get. And the pattern cycles by tilting this mirror. You can make the pattern cycle in or cycle out. And you're just going to have to know what an interferometer pattern looks like to know what I mean by the cycling. But it just means that it has this illusionary appearance that it's coming from the inside, like the light spot blobs into this spot and then blobs here, and it blobs out of the inside, and then it has the appearance of it goes dark, so it goes into the center. So it can look like the pattern's moving in, or it can look like the pattern's moving out. And there are real differences in the phenomenon, and they're clearly related to whether you tilt the mirror up or down or left to right. So if you tilt it this way and that way, you get in, out, and you go in, out. Alright. So it's very dimensionally dependent. So what I'm arguing is basically here at this at this splitter, there's just this simple phenomenon that you're basically creating the little openings using dirt or anything, and the little openings are doing the slit pattern, except they're doing it in the Newton's rings form, and so they're all creating a Newton's rings, a bunch of little Newton ring patterns, but they're all doing it so close together. This is all happening in the the 1/4 inch of the laser beam. They're really close together, so all these things are superimposing on each other when you focus them at a distance. So it's really just a bunch of Newton's rings patterns, all focused, all end up superimposing on top of each other. And so essentially the thickness of these bands would be related to the distance between all of these patterns. So because they're all off a little bit, that's why these bands have thickness. And why the center is so thick, I could probably intuit out of this, but I have to think about that one some more. obviously has to do with the, what's also happening here, is the internal reflection. So they're important, but they're not what instigated all of the different places the light could go. What causes the light to move in very different locations is the dirt, and the fact that it's doing single and double slit experiments and making light go in erratic directions. But the key thing to understand is that to have internal reflections, if light goes straight through, there's only a 4% chance of a reflection on this surface. If it goes in at a 45-degree angle, there's a 50% chance of reflection. If it goes in at a 80-degree angle, there's a 80% chance of reflection. The likelihood of reflection increases as you increase this angle, and the dust particle, is effectively doing that. It's effectively creating a circumstance where each little photon, because of how close it gets to the dust particle, if it gets very close, it deflects a lot, creates the 80-degree angle. If it's a little bit further away, it only deflects 50%. So it has a probability of it being at these higher angles, and the higher the angle, the further out the ring goes. That's why there's so many rings in the interferometer pattern. They get tighter and tighter, and you get more and more of them as you go further out. It's because those are the internal reflections that reflected a lot. That's how they got way out there, and then they pop out at, by probability. It's a percentage. A certain percent will pop out each time. So there's an 80% chance it stays in, but it could pop out the 20% here, or the 20% could be here. The 20% could be at any one of those locations at different probabilistic likelihoods, different amounts. So anyway, so that's what I'd like to stay somewhere on this subject of what component, why do I need this other, what's the role this plays in the experiment if I can create all of the nuance of the experiment without it. And if we're going to include it, where exactly does this thing called interference take place? Because nowhere really in here do we have interference except for the idea that the light's being diffracted, like in a single slit experiment, by little pieces of dust that let light through, and when they let the light through, it comes out crooked. When the light reflects off the half mirror, it doesn't get deflected. That is angle in, angle out. But when it goes through, it's not angle in, angle out. It comes in at a 0-degree angle, and it leaves at some other preposterously stupid angle. So how is anything in what I'm stating here not correct? And it's a substantial, I think. Stop that fucking noise. Stop it! Bad speaker wire. I hope that wasn't going on too much. Sometimes I don't notice things. So anyway, that's probably enough. Yeah, probably. Let's see if I turn this light off, it makes any difference. Well, I did better with the light on, I think. Not by much. Anyway, so till the next time and such, I think that's enough. Yeah, I appreciate the comment. Maybe I should read some of the other comments, actually. Some of them were, of course, rude. Of course. So let me see if the rude one's still loaded. No, it isn't. How do I want to deal with it? I have to load it, find it. Now, let's see if it's convenient enough to do. I think it was just one little snarky comment, but I don't remember. Yeah, it's I'm using Linux, and I really am getting totally used to it. I use it all the time. But I haven't even ran Windows in 4 weeks. I haven't done anything. I still need it for video editing. Some of the things maybe I need it, but yeah. So I've got it running on 3 different computers, on and off, and the one computer just almost never crashes, like once a month maybe. The other one hasn't crashed at all ever. And this one, that I use for the draft physics, And it crashes every couple of days. I don't know exactly what's going on. You don't get like crash reports of any kind. Anyway, I mean, you know. Light emitted by the sun takes about 500 seconds to reach the earth at dawn. Alice starts running with the speed of... So this is the cowboy again. 3.6 kilometers per hour from West Morris High School, he says. I mean, it's just so... I mean, there was just a big school shooting. And this idiot has to start, you know, bringing up my personal information again. And you're just like, why would somebody do that? Why would you inject into anything for no reason whatsoever? Like I said, I haven't personally seen or been near the high school in this town in 30 years. 30 years. 30 years. I haven't seen it physically, eye to eye, in 30 years. Why are you bringing this up? You weird motherfucker. So anyway, I'm just saying, you know, this cowboy guy is a psychotic fucking, I mean, you know, it's almost to the point where, yeah, maybe I should report him to the FBI because he's insane. He's a stalker. He has 900 stalk accounts, and then he starts doing this shit on my videos. This insane shit. Again, there was just a huge school shooting, and he's bringing up a high school in these videos for no reason whatsoever. I mean, how fucking insane can somebody get? I mean, fuck you. Go away, cowboy. Go the fuck away, you lunatic. I don't know why they, you know, I mean, I should at least, I guess, I should, you know, just to point out, I mean, Google lets these insane lunatics harass the fuck out of people, and I don't know why they do it. Anyway, it's disgusting. The whole point is, he's just trying, you know, somebody has done this, okay? They've actually called the police and filed false reports about me being a terrorist or something. They've actually done this shit, and this asshole's making a joke out of it. It's not a fucking joke, lunatic. You people are fucking dangerous to civil law. Bastard. Anyway. Alright, let's see if there was any reasonable comments to help the Nor guy. Well, we'll read them. Let's see where we go. I don't think what you're saying is quite right. Well, it's okay, you don't have to say it's quite right. I'm just saying I'm sure that what you're doing with the math is quite wrong. Okay, because I'm sure it's a distance problem and a time problem. And neither the distance or the time in any part of these experiments is ever a constant. The distance and the time is always going to be different. So when you put it in your equations, like you know some distance as a constant, you've already made a huge mistake, in my opinion. Alright, now I'm trying to represent others accurately, so I'm hoping others would do the same, including you, so to speak. I'm alluding to previous times. Well, again, I don't care what you're alluding to. It's still bullshit. I've never deliberately misunderstood anybody's asshole argument. Fucker. Let me try to explain this yet another way. Well, you keep trying, but I don't think you're going to win. Conceptually, the amount of time added to the first trip is more than the time that is subtracted from the second trip. Okay, you're saying it, but that doesn't mean anything. This has nothing to do with the fact that the back mirror beam splitter keeps advancing when the light gets to the front mirror. Rather, it has to do with the fact that the time when time distance is added happens to be longer than the opposite occurs on the reverse trip. Well, clearly, as pointed out, yes, this doesn't completely undo this, because this is happening. This can't be compared to a non-moving frame, okay? Because yes, these are real effects, and you have to have the control in the same circumstance. It's not a control if it's not in the same circumstance. I mean, the control being where we're doing the 90-degree angle perpendicular thing, okay? And both of those are in the moving frame, so you can't just say perpendicular is not in the moving frame. Alright, anyway. In any case, this GIF demonstrates the case very clear. So they're doing it again. I mean, I just can't believe they keep posting this same idiotic thing. It illustrates nothing. It's a racket. It's not a real experiment. It's not a photograph of an actual experiment. It's your math made visual. And I've pointed out your math is shit. No, let's go there. It's going to be a joke. Same damn bullshit. So this proves nothing. This is their math creating two different circumstances. Not even a good example of the... I mean, you might as well just take the one off the Wikipedia page, for fuck's sake. So again, these aren't moving consistent speeds. The speeds have completely been broken by your riggy math. So this isn't real in any way. And again, you know, one is moving, one's not moving. So the movement, I guess he's saying, is supposed to be compensated for. So yes, so that's what they've done. They've moved it. But we have no example of the return frame for this event. And we don't have an example of the control going the other way, sideways. Right? Right. Alright, so you haven't illustrated something we didn't already know. No one's arguing the two lengths move the same distance. No one argued that going in and going out are going to be the same distance. So this doesn't prove or indicate anything. Okay, I guess I'll just get rid of that. Alright, you can see what the total trip is longer when the setup is moving despite everything having the same length. So again, you can say the total setup. Alright, let's go back to it. I'll point out what's not in their total setup. Alright, they don't move the other length. So I'm just saying, if you you can kind of understand that they don't have a dot moving the angle, right? See this thing just keeps moving straight. It doesn't do this thing. It doesn't take the longer path. They just allow, they're moving the mirror and they're allowing the dot. So the dot didn't leave at the angle it has to hit the mirror in the forward position. See? So they didn't move they didn't do the angle thing. They give you the illusion that everything's just moving, you know. This hasn't compensated for the fact that you have to move at the angle to be able. So we're back to the relativity. Oh, you can't see me pointing at it. Alright. But the point is, there's no angle. This is the you know, I'll use the drawing. Okay, video. This is missing. So they just did this. So they didn't do this. Alright. Back to this one. Alright, so, and we can get rid of that again. Alright, so more, let's see what else he says. This isn't fake image or some trick. Well, it is in the sense that you cheated the perpendicular movement, or something meant to deceive you. Well, I would argue that that's meant to deceive me if you don't include the entire, the fact that it doesn't move straight up, straight back. It has to move at an angle to hit the mirror. Quite obviously, the mirror is moving. You allowed the photon to hit a moving mirror. You know, and in the sense that the right way to put it, your math still didn't change the speed of this photon because it traveled a longer distance. The image has in it a photon that actually would be the straight across distance, not this distance. So when you did the speed of that photon, you didn't compensate for the fact that it's moving a longer distance. Your math is saying it moved the right speed, so that's where you broke that's where you created the gimmick. Yes, I think it is intended to deceive, frankly, but anyway, there is no slowdown, and it does not do any workaround over what you're talking about. Well, see, I've just pointed out how it does exactly that. It just forgets about a fact of the circumstance. It's an exact implementation of what is discussed. So I would argue that all of that is just your claims, and that they're dangerously reckless. And the fact that we should understand that, this is really, there's a lot of details, and we've got to be a little bit careful about saying emphatically anything. I mean, I just got caught in the sense I said, oh look, you just add up those 2 experiments and divide by 2, and I thought I was done, but I wasn't done. I mean, there was another little nuance that had to be dealt with, and here you are just talking more bold stuff. Anyway, you should do well to try to, no, you should do well to say, okay, yes, why don't you just look inside yourself for a minute and say, what am I doing? Am I just trying to make it true? All right. You would do it to try to understand the concept you're talking about before you begin your videos. Yeah, well, fuck you. All right. I think I can demonstrate. Okay, show me the algorithm that creates your little GIF. Okay, and I'll show you where they didn't compensate for the speed change in the photon going perpendicularly. Okay, the one going perpendicular path, they didn't change its length in the algorithm. So even though they have it moving the right way, in the sense it goes this way and it goes this way, they didn't change its speed because they have to, because it's traveling more distance. Fucker. Fucking assholes. You have no tenacity. What is that? It's not even the right word. You have no tenacity to call others liars. So again, this fucking lying statement. So again, I'm deleting this crap. Where did I call anyone a liar, fucker? Will you put together all my quotes of liar except to people who can't misparaphrase me or who lie about me lying? You're a liar, asshole. Because I haven't called others a liar, asshole. Fucking cunt. Or to call the math rigged. Well, I'm not just calling it rigged. I demonstrate why it's rigged. Why does L belong in the fucking math? You explain to me. There's nothing, no length, okay? The going forward or going back. Neither one of them is traveling anything called L, okay? L in going this way is getting bigger. L going the other way is getting smaller. Neither one is traveling anything called a consistent or same L. Obviously, on the backward trip, it's an L that's only 2.25 units long, and on the forward trip, it's a total of 8 units long. So how the fuck are those two L's the same thing? How can you just put L in the equation like it's relevant? It's not. Anyway. Or to call the math rigged, and it would be wise to be careful when you open your mouth. Well, the same to you, fucker cunt. Alright, as already explained, the math is simple. No, as already explained, the math is contrived. Okay? Rigged, and I've demonstrated it. Your math doesn't account for any of this reality at the fuck all. Okay, at the start, the light needs to travel t1 times c distance. So here we go again. If you're gonna measure, if you're gonna use the units of velocity, and you're not gonna recognize that one thing, okay, that in the two experiments, the distance is going to be exactly the opposite, in exact opposite directions. Anyway, which in the end of the first trip, the front mirrors travel t1 times v distance. So again, says you. Okay, which by the end of the first trip, the first front mirror has traveled t plus t1 plus v distance. So why are we using v as a distance? Velocity isn't distance. I mean realistically. Let's see how to explain this. The point is that when the two things are moving towards each other, both velocities are consuming space. When the two things are moving away from each other, one is consuming the distance and one is creating the distance. So you can't just do this plus minus thing. This means that the mirror at the end of the first trip is at position L plus T1 times V. You have to do an integral here. You have to recognize there's an integral necessary. You have to integrate the change in the distance over the entire trip. And if you don't do that, you're not recognizing that when they're both consuming distance, they're rapidly destroying it. Really rapidly. Alright, the light at the end of the trip also has to be there, so T equals L. So again, the distance, L, there's no consistent length here anywhere. And T1 equals L CV. So again, we're back to, here you have the equation, very simple, okay? We're just going to say it's C plus V, C minus V. And what do you do in the end? You make the equation more complicated. Alright. So let's just get to the back. So the forward trip is TLL. Okay, L, this fake distance that wasn't traveled by either one. So we have the fake distance, which could be 4 units, you would say, divided by C minus V, and then he has time 2 equals L divided by C plus V. So again, the non-existent constant, both of them are going to be very different distances. The L for the first one is going to be huge. The L for the other one is going to be tiny. Alright, together it is T1 plus T2 equals 2L divided by C times 1 divided by blah 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 C squared V squared. So the 1 minus trick does not equal 2L. Alright, so 2L, okay, so you could say 2L at half the speed of light works. Okay, so let's just understand that it only comes out to be twice because you chose the speed of light. If I chose 1/4 the speed of light, it won't come out to 8. It won't come out to twice. If I choose anything else, it won't come out to some convenient number. So it's proportionally different. It only comes out to 8 because we picked the one speed that's the exact right speed for the where that part of the equation consumes 8. But if, like I say, if you just change the number a little bit, you change the speed to 1/4 the speed of light, it doesn't work out the same way. So, the number getting the other length gets much bigger. So what you're adding are two different things. So I'm just saying it's an illusion. It's just like when you do square roots or something, and it comes out to look like, well, the square root of 2 and 2 is the 2 plus 2, and the square root of 2 look like to be 2 squared end up being the same number. So I can just say that I can plus any two numbers and I get their square. No, you don't. It doesn't work that way. So why don't you put real numbers in, and put the half the speed of light in, and then put 1/4 the speed of light in for V. Okay, and actually do the equation and see what kind of numbers you get. One more comment, another douchebaggy comment. Let's see. And about your point with the board trying to force you to accept the math. It's not accept the math. It's to accept this particular abuse of the formulation of the experiment. You say you've properly formulated the experiment by using by saying that somehow C and V, although they're constant speeds in the equation, are moving constant distances. They're not moving constant distances. And so your formulation is shit. It doesn't describe what's happening in the experiment. Alright. Isn't it you who says the ought to gap? It's the is ought gap, not the ought to gap. Doesn't exist. Yes, once you know, yes, it's not really complicated. Once you can say something is, once you have a word in your vocabulary called unfair, wrong, bad, stupid, then the is ought gap is gone, because as soon as you say you are stupid, okay, there's an ought, like you ought not to be. Okay. If you, then, a reasonably morally necessitates one to accept the rational argument and facts. So this is like a completely irrelevant tangent again. You're the one trying to uphold yourself to a standard, and if you actually think there are no ought to gap, then there is a reason for you to think about this more clearly. I don't know why. Sorry, but you lost the argument. I mean, what an arrogant cunt. No, sorry, you lost the argument. yeah, you did. Fucking asshole. I mean, I can only, the drawing, I did the drawing, I pointed out where you're wrong over and over, but yes, we all have to be careful in our language, because, anything gets near relativity, there's gimmicks all over the place. Alright, so anyway, see if there's anything else. You should write papers like Miles. You are very hard to look at. So again, a person who has no account, no doubt, right? No content at all. So we don't get to look at the guy who talks about how other people look. But I mean, really, do you think I have a problem with my appearance? I mean, you think I have like you could get to me with some sort of insult, like I'm somehow, you can hurt me, my vanity in some way? I mean, like, do you really think that your opinion could possibly matter to me? I mean, I think I'm doing swell. You think it's like throwing insults at the amazing atheist. Do you think he could you can somehow hurt his feelings? No. So anyway, no content. So just rubbish shit talker. Just these lame, weak people. These weak men. Ugh. Whatever you do, do not get a haircut or brush. That would be wrong. And again, for what functional purpose? So again, so this says he would actually say that to like Einstein or somebody. He'd waste Einstein's time by pointing out, "Hey Einstein, do you know your hair's messy?" I mean, he would do that. He's that big a fucking pussy. Anyway. Anyway, DraftScience, you are up against ideologically motivated hordes. I appreciate your willingness to keep at it, but straightforward tactics involving rational logic and reason don't apply. Then again, no one else has the energy. Well, whatever. I think they will have to apply. You can only beat them down with, just keep hitting things, and eventually they might get it. They will use whatever contrived math and fake images they can imagine. They're not even trying to avoid being blatant about it too. Well, some are worse than others. I think there's some people who just honestly believe it. They haven't really looked into it too deeply, and they don't know the difference between something that's broken as a evidence, broken evidence versus good evidence. Experiments that have been repeated. It's like you could say the Eddington experiment. There's people who probably honestly think, oh yeah, the guy knew what he was doing and it was a good experiment and all that kind of crap, and they never really figured out that he also said right in his own memoirs or diary at the time that he wouldn't stake his life on the results. But the New York headlines, headline didn't say that. Eddington wouldn't stake his life on it. They didn't write that shit. Alright. It's almost akin to hazy images of Bigfoot. It's not about what makes sense, it's about what gives people the most hope. Yeah, I don't think it's as bad as Bigfoot. I mean, those faked evidence, those are obviously people in suits and shit. So, I mean, that's obviously people playing a game. I think what the Piro types do, when they show you a piece of evidence that's obviously not correct, those people's motives are more shitty than maybe this guy's. Oh, here he typed a whole bunch of shit to this guy. Alright. How does talking about the basic fact about algebra imply... So again, he thinks this is about algebra. It's not about algebra. Alright? No formula works if you get it wrong from the very start. If you don't formalize the variables correctly, your math can't do anything constructive. It's not algebra's fault here. Okay, I didn't say algebra's broken. What I said was broken was, you got the wrong shit in the variable, jackass. You're not accounting for the fact that in one case the length is expanding, and in the other case the length is contracting. And you're just not paying any attention. Alright. Imply that there is anything ideological. Why are you assigning an ulterior motive to this? Makes no sense. Well, because in every case, that's all there is here. Simple things have been stated to you people. Your evidence is weak. Not one of you has conceded the argument. Even though it's an obvious fact. Compared to theories like evolution, your evidence is so fucking weak. It's 1,000,000 times weaker. 1,000,000 times. That's what I'll say. I say a reasonable guesstimate as how few pieces of evidence you have. It's 1,000,000 times weaker than the knowledge base Darwin used to argue evolution. That's how thin your evidence is. And you won't concede, oh yeah, well maybe I shouldn't be talking like an arrogant fuck. Okay, I'm surprised with how many upvotes his other videos even got. It goes to show you that, well, it surprises me that you would waste your time downvoting a video. I mean, just amazing little petty trolls you assholes are. Okay, it goes to show, I mean, go make some so I can downvote your videos, fuckhead. You little weasel. It goes to show you that it doesn't matter, you know, how well you craft your comments. So again, you think you've done a masterful job, asswipe, but you haven't. No matter how well you articulate yourself, I think you're amazing. His followers are just going to blindly listen to his arguments. So in the first place, there's no evidence of a huge following, and you know, obviously very often argue with some of their interpretations. So where is this evidence that this is about any kind of oh, be on my side, please, 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 friend me, please. Where is that here, asshole? This fucking piece of shit. His followers are just going to blindly listen to his arguments as if they have any credibility. So again, I do the experiment, right? All this harassment I got about doing experiments, I do the fucking experiment on my porch. Okay, reveal that you can create the exact interferometer pattern without the interferometer. You can do it without a beam splitter, just a piece of fucking dirty glass. Alright, and these assholes come back with this crap. I'm honestly wondering if people are even paying attention. Yeah, now I have to really honestly wonder that, see whether you're some sort of honest, deluded asshole. You know, you're just, you know, fell for it, or whether you're building the bandwagon, gluing people to their chairs. You know, this doesn't even have anything to do with bent space. This is just basic algebra. So again, he says it's just basic algebra to put a constant in the equation that neither thing is traveling. It has absolutely no relevance to either thing, and yet he's saying it's a constant that belongs in the equation. But you know what? Even then, if time has a relationship with velocity, and if time is only a function of matter, then time is changed because it is a function of matter. Well, I don't know how that would change time. Again, time is, if it's a function, it means you have to actually do something for the function to be applied. The function doesn't happen unless something else happens first. That's how functions work. If time is a function, then there is no absolute time. Well, it's just idiotic. Yeah, there is. Everything is traveling absolute time, or the absolute standard of speed. Everything is, if there's an absolute ruler, there's an absolute ruler, asshole, and everything is moving some measure on the absolute ruler. Jackass. This isn't even anything extraordinary. God, you're such a jackass. Even when you talk about time as a dimension, you can still make distinction between a temporal dimension and a spectral dimension. You know, for what reason? They're not even the same, and almost everyone sane would agree that they're not completely the same. Again, I wouldn't even worry about it. There's one dimension, okay, in the sense that there's the 3 physical dimensions, and that's it. There's nothing else. Everything just moves a function, you know, in those dimensions, period. And it takes a certain amount of time for them to move a certain length in those dimensions. The end. That's it. That's the end of the dimensional universe. The point made is that the two things are analogous, like the fact that you can even put events on a timetable, that is. There's no surprise you can put them on a timetable because nothing's moving instantaneous. So as long as nothing's moving instantaneous, everything can be put on the timetable. Oh, geez, fucker. You can do this with other things too, like talking temperature as a dimension. Talking temperature as a dimension. Now, who the fuck would do that? But it's a special thing about the temporal dimension that is that, as DraftScience keeps saying, there's a relationship between velocity and time. So it is inevitable that there is a relationship between that particular type of dimension and spectral dimensions. There's nothing magical about this. Again, there's something completely idiotic about contriving any reason to add anything different than the three dimensions. Why would I add anything to this? Why does this need anything else? There's length and there's speed moving on these vectors, and that's all there is. The end. But I suspect none of this matters. You can always reject this, just like anyone can reject the idea of zero as a number because you can't hold zero amount of things. Well, obviously zero is not a quantity, so yes, it can be a number. It can be used in math to establish the fact of the nothing, but it isn't a something like the other numbers. But what makes this so insulting is that you get to be called ideologically motivated if you try to talk about the idea of zero or try to explain that it isn't anything magical. So again, another subject I haven't even spoken one single word on, but I mean there's a lot more math that's a lot wackier than the idea of zero here. You know, your irrational math. I think it's actually called irrational math. But anyway, alright, so let's see. Okay, so this is this papyrus guy. So this is again probably the cowboy. This isn't about some math gimmick. We assume that the light is traveling at a constant speed. Yes, everybody's assumed that. WRT, some absolute reference frame, and we see that the light takes longer to travel one path than the other. You don't see anything. So again, you're saying what you're seeing. The whole point of the argument is you don't know what you're fucking seeing. You don't explain. Explain to me. Quantum mechanics says, I mean, I've said this so many times and not one answer from you, you lame assholes. The rules of quantum mechanics basically say that photons interfere with themselves. There's no examples in quantum mechanics except for Feynman's theories about any example from the physical world. No physical evidence that two photons ever interfere with each other. So the photon has to interfere with its own wave function. So why don't you show me in the interferometer where that's happening, asshole? And why don't you explain then, if you can't find it, how two different photons can interfere with each other? What went the other length? What goes the two lengths? Do the photons travel the two lengths, or do wave functions travel the two lengths? I mean, you haven't explained shit. Alright, and we see that the light takes longer to travel one path than the other. We didn't see any such fucking thing. You don't have any picture of any such fucking thing. The math used to figure this out is basic algebra. So again, they keep saying it's basic algebra, except if you assign the variables wrong, your algebra is going to be wrong, asshole. It's not Huygens. Well, it might as well be, because it's the same idea. You're just basically making up fictitious relationships, that L is somewhere in the circumstance, that there's a constant distance somewhere in the circumstance, when the circumstance is basically defined by the fact that the distance isn't constant. Okay, it is a wave equation. No, it's not the wave equation. The wave equation isn't the wave equation, okay? It's a pattern equation. But anyway, and it doesn't involve PDEs. Well, I'm not going to waste my time trying to figure out what these acronyms are. If you think the fringe pattern isn't affected by differences in the traversal times of the two path components, then just say that. I have just said that. And I've said clearly the distance matters, but the distance is being measured based on the divergence. The more distance, the more divergence. Asshole. I've said it so many fucking times. You're not measuring the wavelength of the light. You're not measuring changes in phase. You're measuring the divergence. Alright. The two-path components, then just say that, but don't say the math is a gimmick. The math, as you've done it, is fucking correct, because you have to integrate the fucking fact that the distance is changing throughout the entire experiment. Alright, so I think that's I'm done here. So yes, I will delete Nor fucker, you lewd bastard, and such. Good enough. Sorry, that went longer than I thought it would have to go. Yeah, I think it's enough to say. Let's all. It's just this idea that you have to be so careful about what you say you're certain of. And I'm guilty of it sometimes too, just because I want to do the gotcha thing, get this over with. I don't want to have to keep arguing the same fucking bullshit over and over and over and over and over. And yes, their whole foundational theory is 100 years in the making. So yes, they have lots of things, okay, lots of little bits they've put together to support it. But I'm saying I have shown the vulnerabilities that the bits have. I pointed out in the two-slit experiment how the pattern doesn't gradate the way it should. It's not the right intensity to fit the math. What the math says it should look like, it doesn't look like what the math says it should look like. And I'm just saying there's lots of those points that haven't been answered. And the only way you people answer them is with something stupid like, well, you can't see the actual photons. Or some kind of bullshit like that. Anyway. So, anyway, till next time. And such. Sorry, I mean, I feel sorry for people having to watch. I mean, these are long videos. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, but it is physics. And it is arguing with fanatics. I mean, this is what fanatics do. They just keep catch-22ing you about these, this God crap. Well, if God has ultimate powers, he can put dinosaur bones in the ground, into the rocks, and he's just doing that to test you. He's just saying, oh, are you such a fool that you would fall for this? So, of course God put the fossils in the record. Of course he's trying to trick you. That's part of building your character. They'll make some irrational argument that somehow it makes sense for God to try to trick us into believing in evolution. But this feels like the same kind of conversation. No matter what you say, again, no matter you do the experiment on your fucking porch, you show that a single piece of glass is a beam splitter. Why is anybody paying extra for a beam splitter? If you can split light with a piece of glass 50-50, why do I need a beam splitter to do it? Simple question. Could somebody answer the fucking simple question? Oh, that's right, because it has just the right amount of dirt in it. Yeah. You know why you need a beam splitter? It's so you have a consistent dirt. See, the dirt is put in between the layers in the beam splitter, and it's always a consistent amount of dirt. So it becomes a reliable dirt splitter, or whatever you want to call it. Dirty glass. It becomes reliably dirty glass. So that's the truth. That's why you use a beam splitter. So you have a consistent amount of dirt in your experiment to create the consistent amount of diffraction. Because otherwise it's a little bit inconsistent. You would just smear your greasy fingers all over the glass to make a beam splitter that diffracts the light. But that's the key to this whole thing, right? Did any of you assholes really know that? Before I investigated, did any of you assholes really know that it was the stupid dirt on the surface of the glass that was causing the diffraction that creates the rings? Did any of you assholes know that? No. Did you really understand that there are internal reflections inside the glass? Did you really think about that, and that the mirrored surface is there's only glass on one side and you have a mirror surface on the other side, that there's no internal reflection problem for the reflected light. So the reflected light never gets trapped inside the glass, and it's only the light that goes through that gets trapped inside the glass. Did you think about any of that shit before I showed up to explain it, to investigate and find those answers, assholes? No, you didn't know that. Fuckers. You don't know how the experiment works, and yet you emphatically say it's reliable, it tells the truth, it's a crystal ball. I mean, you're so fucking full of shit. Alright, now I'm done.